We want to talk about economic growth, specifically what we call gross domestic product. Gross domestic product is the total market value of all goods and services that we produce in a given year. Gross meaning total. Domestic means in the United States, only within the confines of the United States. We may have factories and plants in other countries, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, what have you. Those don't directly benefit the growth of the United States. They may benefit the growth of Korea, of Japan, but they don't actually benefit us. So what we need to do is we need to count only domestic production. That production that is done in the United States, even by foreign countries. If we have a Toyota plant in Michigan that is producing Camrys or Priuses, that is helping our economy, and therefore that is part of our GDP, our total market value of all goods and services produced in a year. Gross domestic product includes only final goods. We do not include intermediate goods. An intermediate good is a good that is used to produce another good. If in fact GM is making a new car, when you purchase that car, it should come with a windshield. If we included that intermediate good, if we included that windshield as an additional charge to the car, then we would be subject to what we call double counting. We would be overestimating our GDP. So therefore, we only count final goods to the final consumer, which would be you and I. GDP excludes things like transfer payments. Anytime the government gives its citizens money through taxes, through welfare payments, through social programs, that is considered to be a transfer payment. That is not part of GDP. Whenever we have a secondhand sale, you sell your 2005 Chevy to your next door neighbor. That is not included because that would have already been included in 2005 when you purchased it. And finally, it does not include what we call non-productive financial payments, which would be if you got $100 from your aunt or uncle or grams or something like that at Christmas time. It would not be somebody sending you $50 for your birthday or what have you. So the one thing that we need to understand is that every dollar that you spend on a good or service shows up as income to somebody who helped produce that particular good or service. You bought your economics book. You paid, I'm going to say $200 for your economics book. That actually showed up as wages to the people, to the laborers, to the people who actually set the type, who actually did the illustrations. That ended up as rent on the land. That ended up as interest on the capital that you had to lease. And finally, the end result is profit. So if we take this concept, every dollar that we spend on a good and service, expense, every dollar that we expend on a product must equal income, then the two must equal each other. And that is how we come up with our GDP. The groups of people who spend money on American products are us, consumption, from going to the movies, to going out to eat, to going down to the beach in a couple of weeks to celebrate Memorial Day. That would be considered personal consumption. Investment, gross I sub G, gross private domestic investment. Investment by businesses in plant and equipment. Investment by businesses in inventory. And finally, non-residential investment in factories. Government expenditures, from the purchase of a new bomber to fight a war that we're going to get into, to the hammers that are used, or the computers that are used, the cell phones that are used by our government. And finally, the last group of people who will purchase American goods are foreigners. However, we need to extrapolate, we need to subtract the amount of non-American goods that Americans buy, our imports, and therefore our net exports is exports minus our imports. The amount of goods foreigners, the amount of American goods foreigners buy versus the amount of foreign goods we as Americans buy over American goods. And there's a lot more components to national income accounting, and you are required to know that, but for time's sake, I'm cutting this very short. We just don't have the time to go over this. The expenditure and the income must equal each other. We have two different types of GDP that we have to recognize. GDP is a monetary figure. The way we get GDP is simply by the price of the good times the quantity that we sell. So therefore, if we make 4 shirts and each shirt sells for $20, our GDP would be equal to $80. If next year we make those same 4 shirts and now those same 4 shirts are $25, our GDP would be $100. But the amount of shirts hasn't changed, only the price has changed. And therefore, when we talk about GDP, we need to realize that we have what is called nominal GDP, GDP by name only, if you will. GDP that is in fact unadjusted for inflation. And real GDP is that inflation that has been adjusted for inflation. At this particular juncture, when we graph, on our quantity axis that we talked about during supply and demand, we were always putting a singular figure down representing the quantity, 20 movies, 30 years of corn, whatever we would have. Now we have to change that because we have so many products that are being produced. The only way to do that is to count the quantity of goods that we're going to do. We're going to call this GDP on a horizontal axis now, which is actually going to be a monetary figure. But we're going to think in our minds that this actually represents quantity, because that's what gross domestic product is, the total market value of all goods and services produced. Subsequently, we no longer have the price of apples, we no longer have the price of movies, we no longer have the price of books, but we need to take the total of those and now call them the average price, and we call that the price level. So from now on, we will be putting our price level on our vertical axis, our GDP, thinking that it's quantity, but actually it's a monetary figure, on our horizontal axis, and of course our zero. This particular chapter is really full of a lot of information, and again, because of time, we don't really have time to get into any particular aspect. If you have any questions, same thing. Put it on the discussion page of Blackboard, email me personally, and I'll do this. I'll put it back on the discussion board. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.